This next question is about your ability to work under pressure. Tell me about a time where you had to work to an unrealistic deadline. How did you handle the situation, and what was the result? This is a typical example of a behavioural interview question. Behavioural interview questions are questions where they ask you about previous situations you've experienced at work and use that to try and predict your ability to perform right now or in the future. Basically what they're doing is they're asking you to tell stories. People often get scared by the term behavioural interview question. I mean, it sounds like some kind of weird science experiment, but the truth of the matter is they're just asking you to tell stories about things that happen to you at work. And if you think about it as a storytelling exercise, it might feel a lot easier and you might do a whole lot better. Behavioural interviews are great ways to show how good you are at what you do. And it's great because you don't have to just be overconfident and tell them that you're amazing. What you can do is just say, this is what I did, this is how I did it, and this is what happened. And I have interviewed once, I interviewed a young lady who was incredibly good at her job. And she was able to, in 45 minutes, convince my boss, who's a very skeptical person, that she was worth $150,000 a year. That was what she was on in her previous role. And by talking through the things that she did and how she went about her job on a daily basis and her understanding of the company and the results she brought, it was so obvious that she was worth what she was paid. And that was the first thing my boss said when we walked out the door. He would say that about very few people. And the thing is, this is an opportunity you have too. You can show them what you're worth by answering these questions properly. So let's have a look at how we can do that. The first thing you need to do to get ready for a behavioural interview is to look at the questions they're going to ask you and find the right examples you can talk about. What are the right stories you have to tell to get this job? The way to find that is to think about what this job involves. If you're applying for a job in admin, for example, you need to think about stories that show that you have the skills that an admin person needs to have to be successful. Now, in my mind, if you want to work in admin, you need to be incredibly organized, you need to have attention to detail, and you need to have good communication skills. If you can talk about times where you had to work and demonstrate those skills to bring about good outcomes in the workplace, you'll do really well. So find the right stories that match the job you're applying for. When we answer a behavioural interview question, we often use the STAR technique to structure our narrative and make sure we don't forget parts of the story. What is the STAR technique? It basically is a simple acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. If you follow this acronym, it makes sure you don't forget parts of the story. Some people, when they tell a story, they forget to set up the story. What was the situation? Where were you? What were you doing? What was your position? They forget the task. What were you actually trying to achieve? What was the whole point of the situation? They forget about the action. What did you do? Don't talk about your team, talk about what you did. What was the whole point? And then move to the result. What happened? So you did some things. What did they actually bring about? What was the outcome at the end? And also, what did you learn? If you can use this to your advantage, if you can give them a structured story, you can highlight exactly how you go about doing things and give them a good sense of how great a fit you'd be in that role. So how did that young lady demonstrate that she was worth $150,000 a year? And that's a lot of money. The way she demonstrated her value was by really giving good stories, and stories with all the detail that showed that she knew exactly what she was doing in her job. She understood relationships and she understood how the decisions were made across the company. She had relationships and social networks that she leveraged to get things through, and the results were incredible. She did incredibly smart things and got incredibly great outcomes as a result, and that came through very clearly. Now, the way she did that was she told stories that were compelling. She told stories where we were on board the whole time. She gave us a sense of context and what she was trying to achieve, how she achieved it, and what happened as a result. And if she had skipped any of those parts, it would be really difficult to understand just how good she was. So the STAR technique definitely works. Now remember, you're just telling stories, but the STAR technique helps guide your answer and make sure you don't forget any part of your answer. It makes sure you don't forget parts of your story. All right, so let's work through an example. I'm going to tell you now about a time I had to work under pressure and work to an unrealistic deadline. And I'll talk about how I handled it. So let's use the STAR technique and see how I go. So, the situation. Last year I was working at the Centre for Workplace Leadership. Actually, I still work there now. And I had just started as a coordinator for education and programs. Now, I was given the task of writing a business plan for education and programs. This was an unrealistic deadline because one, I had no prior experience writing business plans, and two, I'd been given 6 weeks to do the task. Now, my boss told me immediately that this was unrealistic because this piece of work needed 2 to 3 months to really get right. And unfortunately, the hiring process had taken longer than they'd expected, so time deadlines meant that we had less time to do it in. Now, this was an important outcome because it was something that was going to be submitted to the advisory board, which would help us get buy-in politically. So it was really important in our organisation that this actually delivers the outcome. And yet, I had a very difficult deadline to work to. So how did I handle it? What I really went about doing was mapping out the work, and that involved me understanding exactly what it involved. So for the first week, I spent a lot of time reading about business plans. What does a good business plan look like? I looked through some Harvard Business Review articles about business cases and business plans and looked through what kind of inputs they need. And it became immediately apparent that I needed to get a few things sorted immediately. I needed to get market research done. So we had to put that at the tender straight away. And so we did it. I also had to get a research assistant to help me look at the market and make some evaluations. So we organised that straight away. We also had to talk to industry. So I organised with a colleague to go and approach different large organisations and talk to their organisational development people. We organised all these little pieces in the first 2 weeks because we had to race against time to get things done. And by 5 weeks in, when I had a week to go, the market research was in, the conversations had all happened, and we'd followed up and we talked to 12 people in different industries. We got a research assistant for a week to help look at competitors, and the document I put together had all the inputs it needed, and it actually surpassed my boss's expectations by a huge margin. The advisory board was very pleased with what I submitted, and they asked me to do more business plans for the rest of the centre. So it was actually a very successful outcome for us. So that's how I answer behavioural interview questions. Remember, it's just storytelling. If you can tell a good story, you're going to do very well in the behavioural interview. If you can spin a good yarn, if you can really just bring the interviewer along through your story and let them walk in your shoes and see what you did and why it mattered, you'll show them how great a candidate you are. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time, and I hope you do really well in the next interview you go to. All the best.